Michael Quinn, our general session keynote speaker, is president and CEO of Sharyland Utilities and Hunt Utility Services. He served as Sharyland's vice president of operations, but during his time there, Michael has directly supported and played a key role in the asset growth of the company itself. Before joining Sharyland, Michael worked for Encore Electric Delivery Corporation. I'm really excited that Michael has agreed to be our 2023 keynote speaker because he's not just an industry leader, but he's also a friend. I've known Michael for years. We've had a few pretty ferocious golf matches. Sometimes I almost hit him with a ball from the other fairway, back and forth, but we've always had fun. He, for the record, was the one that introduced the string idea to the golf tournament, and whoever that foursome was behind us who bought 6 packages of string yesterday, yeah. Way to support the foundation. It's also important that Michael's friendship is to me personally. I also want you to know that he's a longtime friend and supporter of UTC. It's just one example of his commitment was his time that he served on the UTC Board of Directors. It is my high honor to welcome your 2023 keynote speaker, our friend, Michael Quinn.
Thank you, Senator. Try and put my water up here without spilling it. Awesome. It's a lot darker out there when we practiced. Holy smokes. I'm staring at 19 lights. I'm going to move around because I cannot stand to stare at the lights. So, welcome. Good afternoon to everybody. I am your keynote speaker, and I got paid $0 for this. I do not negotiate well. So, no, Carnell asked me, he said, hey, you've kind of grown up in the industry. What do you think about coming to talk about some of that ideas and knowledge that you've picked up during your 15 different jobs in the industry? And so I'm on 34 years, and so I'm officially old, and we're talking about other people coming into the industry and, you know, younger folks coming into UTC and I'll say diving in. And so hopefully I'll get to share some thoughts about the industry itself, but maybe give you a little bit of way to get plugged in, and also to think about when the expo hall opens, how do we get the most out of that situation? So anyways, thank you for UTC for inviting me to attend. Great opportunity at every conference. And so for those in the room that know me, I have a tendency to sometimes kind of overshare and provide the unvarnished truth. And so over the next 20 or so minutes, and they've got a clock down there that says 20, I'm going to do 20 minutes of my own funeral. So I have no chance of sticking to time, right? And so I'm not going to try and convince you my truth is the right truth. What I'm going to do is try and give you some perspective and the lens I look at as a CEO and how those 15 different jobs have kind of impacted me. So let's begin by talking a little bit about the recent history of our industry, especially since COVID reset a lot of things that we knew. Let's talk inflation. First 5 or 6 slides are kind of themes, but inflation's one of them. Inflation's real and it impacts us in a personal way from a spending. What was $4 is now $6. But for utilities, it's actually much worse. It puts strain on earnings and how close we come to earning our authorized ROE. And so, unfortunately, today, we're replacing low-cost debt with 5, 6, 7% debt. Previously, debt for utilities was in 2 and 3% range. So depending on the maturity, you're looking at 5, 6, 7. And so if utilities are spending more money, more OPEX money to service the debt, and unless you have a regulatory mitigant that most of us don't, you eat that higher cost of debt until you get to a rate case. Why is this important for this room? One natural reaction to unmitigated OPEX pressure is to pull back on spending in other spots. And so for some in this room, What was lean is going to get leaner. And unfortunately, it's kind of a vicious cycle. You miss your earnings and your ROE, and you have the risk of your credit being downgraded, which in the future requires you to pay more for debt. Bad cycle. Supply chain. If you don't think supply chain's a mess, you haven't been watching. What used to take 36 weeks for a high voltage circuit breaker is now 70. And this is most traditional T&D equipment. I'm talking about transformers, relays, conductor, towers, all of it. So this has some of us, including Sharyland, rethinking our critical spares inventory. And so we use cash from operations to build up warehouse inventory. I assure you, no CEO in the history of this industry ever went to bed dreaming of putting more equipment into warehouses. That's not how we make money, folks. At best, it's a necessary evil for our times today. Workforce. If you've been in the workforce marketplace for talent lately, it's marked by nearly every position wanting a signing bonus, some amount of work from home, greater turnover. It's very difficult to retain our top talent. Everybody's experiencing this, the way I explained it to folks. People go across the street for an extra $8,000. And so it is an incredibly competitive space. Your HR team will tell you, if you want loyalty, go get a golden retriever. It ain't happening to people. Resource plan. Resource planning has never been super easy, but today we have real competing priorities, at least in Texas where Sharyland is. Since Winter Storm Uri in February of 2021, when we got real close to significant long-term outages in major portions of the state, there's a renewed commitment to dispatchable generation. So the ledge and the PCT are pushing dispatchable over renewable. And for those in this room who say, well, that's a Texas independent grid issue, take 5 minutes and go look what happened to PJM during the last winter. They were about 10 minutes away from the bad thing too. So it's not just one grid or one place. Inflation Reduction Act has a 10-year embrace for wind power, solar, and energy storage. In the ERCOT queue alone, ERCOT serves about 90% of Texas, but in the ERCOT queue alone, we've got 27,000 megawatts of wind, 128,000 megawatts of solar, and nearly that same amount of energy storage. And that's against a top load of 80,000 megawatts, right? So you've got, in theory, tremendous more generation that wants to come in. But we have to study each of those scenarios before an interconnection agreement can be reached. Add this to dispatchability encouraged by the PCT and the ledge, and I'll tell you flat out, your planners are getting burnt out. Cyber and physical threats. They're real and they're gaining more complexity each day. It's difficult not to feel like you're in a constant state of catch-up. You can spend as much time architecting security into platforms as you do setting up the platforms themselves. Regulatory. The regulatory environment at both the state and federal level, scrutiny is going up through the roof. Everything's ratcheting up significantly. As a CEO in Texas, I have to sign an attestation twice a year that we've completed all the required maintenance that is needed for the extremes of both summer and winter. That comes with a financial penalty if you have a failure due to temperature-related issues. During rate cases, ROEs are taking a hit if performance metrics like total time to interconnect a new customer are taking too long. Being excellent in regulatory prowess is table stakes, and sooner or later, everybody gets their turn in the regulatory pit, I assure you. Technology and telecom, the group here. Combined all that great news that I just shared with you with the normal challenges the professionals in this room have day to day. Here's the harsh reality, folks. From an executive perspective, your long tenure means you're expensive for what you deliver. Your CapEx investment has too short a lifespan and too high a depreciation rate compared to other T&D assets. To some, you look like a bad investment. So if I'm sitting in your chair, first off, you go get Carnell and go, what in the hell is he talking about on our 75th anniversary? My gosh, man, you couldn't bring in a guy who had a much more uplifting story? Remember, that was my engagement fee. So, oh, how do I back up one if somebody can help me? I'm a president, okay. So, with all that doom and gloom, I just kind of set the stage in. You'd ask the question, is our best days ahead of us or behind us? Am I an optimist? Am I a realist? Am I a pessimist? And I'll tell you, after 34 years in this industry, I'm still an optimist. And let me give you part of the reason why. Part of my enthusiasm starts with a purpose as the industry and how it manifests itself. We provide warmth in the winter and cooling in the summer. We enable technologies to support hospitals during a pandemic and connectivity for individuals that have been separated or forced apart. We deliver power for the bright lights needed for a Panther's win and a reading lamp to educate and improve ourselves. We deliver power for mobility, industry, food production, and safe drinking water. That's what this group enables. We support the continued economic success of the nation. Our work done right positively impacts humanity, contributes to society, and helps create a great place to work. If this doesn't get you excited to come to work, stay your butt home. I don't want you, don't need you, can't use you. The truth is, we're even better as an industry when the storms and tornadoes and hurricanes come. Our easy days are when we're just delivering KWH. When the bad things come, it's hard. So, a rhetorical question there says, second most critical deliverable that we bring. If KWH is number one for us, in the absence of those things I mentioned, what's the next most important thing we produce? Data and information to make decisions. Now, the technology people that I was just skewering 5 minutes ago for being a cost center are now a value center. When the bad things happen, one of the first things all CEOs look to do is de-risk the situation. The path to de-risking a situation or scenario is through accurate information via reliable systems and robust processes. I believe that's what this group oversees every day. When the Public Utility Commission asks, when are you going to get, those 500,000 customers back on? Your best guess isn't what they're after, I assure you. We have last gas for meters, SCADA, sophisticated platforms, algorithms, drones performing damage analysis. And we have what's most unusual in other industries, mutual assistance. And so when the cavalry comes, directing them to restoration zones that have been assessed so they can work independently while communicating via LMR or microwave, that's when the magic happens. So let's talk about a few things that CEOs think about that we may not always think about in this room. ROE and revenue. As a utility executive, let me help you navigate the expo hall for just a second. So hopefully you have some alignment when you get back in your offices. First off, CFOs will willingly trade capital spend for reductions in OpEx every day. That's regardless of your IOU, muni, co-op. CapEx spend usually means additional revenue is coming. So what's our obligation? Show the value of the purchase, meaning what it enables or problems it's solving. It's not I'm swapping widget 1 out for widget 2. It's I've invested here so I can recoup some time here, or I can de-risk. For another utility I worked at, it wasn't until we showed the risk profile on what data and information that was in jeopardy of not getting brought back did funding come. When management fully understands what data runs through what platforms and what doesn't happen when they fail, funding comes. Pick solutions that have longer depreciation timelines. Really important. A handheld radio or computer depreciates in about 4 to 5 years. Most utilities don't go for rate cases, but every 4 years. So maybe before you get into a rate case, you've lost 80% of the cash of that investment. And so that's why everybody in this room gets asked to sweat an asset longer, I assure you. Better yet, try and match the T&D asset depreciation timelines, or at least get closer to them. Fiber and the static, 30-year depreciation rate, awesome bandwidth. Spectrum, even better. An actual asset that appreciates in our industry. So the guidance I give you is contribute to the ROE and revenue versus being a drain on it. Performance metrics. As an industry, we have a tendency to measure what matters. This could be OpEx per mile, OpEx per customer, customer satisfaction, safety, human performance incidents, employee engagement, project budgets, timelines, mean time between phases. We have tons and tons of things that we measure, and sometimes we get tired of having that many metrics. It's pretty purposeful, and it's kind of mass sometimes. Most commissions won't pay incentive compensation, what we call as year-end bonuses, if performance metrics are tied to financial triggers like EBITDA or stock price. Voila, all of a sudden we've got these performance metrics where we're trying to measure the entire world, right? And so as you progress in your career, the percentage of your total cash depending on performance metrics really increases. And so I assure you, if you thought your year-end bonus is important, it isn't nearly as important as those guys at the top of the food chain. That is why they are studying performance metrics day in and day out. Make no bones about it. So what, now what? This is my last slide. So I want to say thank you for everybody being attentive and hearing my message. I may have time for 2 questions. I kind of run over, but I plan to hang out after the session if you want to come visit. First part of my presentation was purposeful, and that I've sat in your seats and I felt both marginalized and a bit defeated. It was only when I changed my lens that the opportunities really come into focus. So I want to introduce 3 important questions that I ask my team to bring conversations we have when we meet. It helps us be efficient in the meeting and allows us to have a complete conversation. What? What specifically are you trying to tell me? So what? Why do I care about what you're sharing with me? Now what? What are you prepared to do with this information? Are you telling me to help me make a decision? Are you going to own that? So interesting statistics when I was getting ready to come out here. 29% of all CEOs played varsity level sport in college. We are competitive people, I assure you. And so when you start shaping the conversation around concepts that they care most about, and you bring answers to these 3 questions, you provide them a head start on formulating strategy surrounding an issue. And that's what we call value. Increase your value. I assure you, good things come after that. So that's all my comments. If there's a question, I'm happy to take it. It would be tough for me to see you, I assure you. I'm not seeing anybody. All right, Ron, I think you're next.